to Dr. Aravinda Rao garu. It is a talk uh, which is very much required to conclude any symposium because it is a positive note. Dr. Aravinda Rao garu wants to talk about how the discussion on Brahminism can be taken into a positive direction. There can be a positive Brahminism is the theme of the talk of Dr. Aravind Rao garu. He is currently staying with his children in United States. That is why we had to schedule his talk towards the end of the symposium. But incidentally, it is actually a very right position for the symposium because the symposium can end in a positive note through such a positive uh, direction for uh, Brahminism. Thank you very much, Dr. Arvind Rao garu, for joining, and I hope it is not an odd time for you. Please, over to you.
Namaskar, everyone. Thank you, Sri. Thank you, Sri Nagaraj Garu. I will start with the final remark made by Sri Udumudi Srinivas. So he made a very great remark that we should not respond to the Western criticism as Brahmins, but we have to respond to that criticism as Hindus. So in this context, I want to start with a small story because your seminar started say sometime around 11 o'clock in the morning, and since morning you have been listening and you have been sitting also. So I want to start with a story from the Mahabharata. The story is about the killing of Vritrasura. Vritrasura was killed by Indra, we all know. And when Vritrasura was killed, all the other asuras, they fled, and then they hid themselves in the seas, in the ocean. And in the nights, they used to come and then attack the Brahmins, because their argument was that the Brahmins, they were performing yajnas, and they were strengthening the Vritrasura, strengthening Indra. It was Dadhichi, a Brahmana sage, who gave his that vertebral column to Indra, and then that became the Vajrayudha, and then so that is the reason. That of course is a symbolism. Symbolism will leave it. But anyway, the Brahmins, they were performing yajnas, and then they were enhancing the strength of Indra. So these Brahmins have to be annihilated. So they hid in the ocean, but then they used to come out in the night, and then they used to kill Brahmins and maim Brahmins, and they were attacking the Brahmins. So the Brahmins, they were crying, and then Indra was not, he was not knowing where the Brahmins were. So the Brahmins went to Agastya. Agastya, he drank the entire ocean, and then Indra killed the Asuras. So there, in that context, in Vanaparva, this episode comes. There are a few shlokas which tell about the logic of these Asuras. Asuras, they say, Lokahi sarva tapasadhriyante. Tasmat Tvaradhvam Tapasa Shayaya. The whole world is supported by tapas. The whole world exists only because there are people who are doing some tapas. Tapas means some, as Srinivas said, mortification and self-sacrifice, self-purification. So they are the ethical role models for the society. So this is what existed. Loka hi sarva tapasa dhriyante tasmat tvaradhvam tapasa shayaya. Get ready and then kill all these people. Ye santi vidya tapasopapannaha tesham vinashah pratamam tu karyah. Those who are existing, those who are endowed with vidya and tapas, it is necessary to destroy them first. It is greatly needed to destroy them first. So this is actually the idea. That is, if you destroy the Brahmins, you will be destroying Hinduism. So that is the point. If you destroy the Brahmins, then the entire society is with you. That is what they say. Loka hi sarva, once these people are deshu pranashteshu jagat pranashtam. The next few lines go on like that. Once they disappear, the entire world is ours. So the same theory holds on right down to Francis Xavier and right down to Sheldon Pollock and all these people. So that is how we can start. Then, as Sri Nagaraj just now said, the purpose of this discussion is to examine the terminology now being used by our Indologists. Indologists means basically they are not scholars. And Srinivasji, as you remarked, They are having a political agenda, not only political agenda, but also the religious agenda. The religious agenda, because the Abrahamic religions, they are totalitarian in nature. They have a totalitarian ideology. There is no doubt about it. And we have to talk about it also. So the terminology which is created by the anti-India and anti-Hindu forces, basically to create unrest in the Indian society, the ultimate object, their ultimate objective is to eliminate Hinduism and plant their own religions. So that is the ultimate objective, and our objective has to be to counter such arguments. Apart from whatever we have to do in the field, that's a different thing. So as we know, the all the modern battles they start at an ideological level because the use of creation of new words, because the words are weapons now. They have to create new words as weapons, and then the creation of narratives, etc. And after some sufficient heat is built up in the society, then street battles start. Because, for example, the Brahminism is something which is well on us. Sanatana Dharma is something which is well on us. So that idea goes into the minds of the people. Once that idea goes into the minds of people, and then some sufficient heat is built up, then street battles start. Then that is the reason why we say, hey, Brahmins quit India, etc. So it is not the fight against Brahmins alone. Once these people are eliminated, then the whole society is ours. So that is the logic. Then let us examine now the words called Brahminism and Brahminical, etc. So Brahminical, what does it mean? Or Brahmana. Brahmana, as we know, the word comes from Brahma. Brahma, and Brahma itself has several meanings. Brahma means the supreme reality, Satyam Jnanam Anantam Brahma, that infinitely existing consciousness. That is what is Brahma. And Brahmana is one who pursues that knowledge. Brahmana is one who embodies that knowledge. So that is what is a Brahmana, Brahmajnanena Brahmana. So Brahma also means Veda, because we see that in Shankaracharya's Bhashyam, for example, in the fourth chapter of the Gita, Jagat Palayitrunam Kshatriyanam Baladhanaya Tena yoga balena yuktaha samartha bhavanti brahma parirakshitum. So the Gita was told to Kshatriyas, not to Brahmanas. Gita is not told to monks and sannyasis. Gita was told to Kshatriyas in order to do their duty in a very perfect way. Jagat Palaiturnam Kshatriyanam Baladhanaya, in order to infuse strength among the Kshatriyas, in order so that they can rule well, they can effectively rule. So that is the purpose of Gita. And then what will they do? Tena yoga balena yuktaha samarthaha bhavanti brahma rakshitum. In order to protect this Brahma, in order to protect this Veda, there are two meanings given there. In order to protect the Vedic Dharma, and also in order to protect the Brahmana Jati. That also is there, Brahmana Jati or Brahmana Varna. So then, what is this Vaidika Dharma? This Vaidika Dharma, what is the uniqueness of Vaidika Dharma? In the same Sambandha Bhashya of Bhagavad Gita, Shankaracharya writes, Dvividho hi vedokto dharmaha pravritti lakshanascha nivritti lakshanascha. There are two this Vaidika dharma is at two levels. One is the pravritti lakshana and the other is nivritti lakshana. Pravritti lakshana is how a person has to conduct oneself in the society. That is, it relates to all our social interactions. And nivritti lakshana is something which is unique to only Indian civilization. It is not there in any other civilization. By Indian civilization, we have to include Buddhism and also Jainism. Of course, Sikhism is a much later religion. I am not talking about it. But in all these three religions, there is this Shramana tradition, which Srinivas talked just now. This Shramana tradition, this ethical, this self purification and to the level of mortification. So that is there in these traditions. So this Nivrutti Dharma, that is withdrawing from the world, renunciation, and then being a role model and being a monk, being a bhikshu, living on bhikshatana, that is something to sustain sattva in the society. Because our philosophy is based on the Upanishads, and also we have accepted the Sankhya concept of sattva, rajas, tamo guna, that principle into Hinduism. And then sattva guna is a very essential thing in society. Because anything, the whole universe is, it consists of three things, that is sattva, rajas, and tamoguna. And without sattva-guna, the universe cannot exist. I will come to that later. But then first, if we examine the words Brahma and Brahmana, so Brahmana comes from the word Brahma. Brahma means Veda. And Veda, this Vaidika Dharma means Vaidika Dharma is at two levels, that is Pravritti Dharma and also Nivritti Dharma. The Nivritti Dharma is something which is unique to Hinduism, which we do not find in the other civilizations. That is the reason why we see this Abrahamic religions now quarreling for survival. Whether it is UK or Germany, the two Abrahamic religions are fighting between themselves. So that is one thing. Then, if we see the pejorative words for Brahmana are Bapana, or Tamilian Papana. Maybe they started as Vikruti Rupas. For example, Bapana, in Telugu, we hear the word Bapana. I never felt it was a pejorative term because right from my childhood I have been listening to the word Bapanollu, Bapanollu. I never thought it to be a pejorative word. Maybe something like that started in Tamil Nadu also when they started calling Papan, Papan. I do not know their context. But anyway, these started as say Vikruti. For example, we see Prakriti, Vikruti, Brahmana, Bapana, Upadhyaya, Vajja. So something like that we see the Prakriti, Vikruti. So, yeah, as a Vikruti form, it has started among people and it continued. Later, probably it acquired some pejorative connotations. And the word Brahminism, if we see, I have not read much of Indology, but then as I see that it is actually a true translation of the word Brahmanatva. That is what I feel. I see from our own text, this word Brahmanatva is very much there in our text. Again, going to Shankaracharya, if you see, in the very Sambandha Bhashya of Gita, Saha Adikarta Narayanakhya Vishnu Bhaumasya Brahmana Brahmanatvasya Rakshanartham Devakyaha Vasudevat Amshena Devakyam Vasudevat Amshena Krishna Kila Sambhavuva Brahmanatvasya hi Rakshane Rakshitasyat Vaidiko Dharmaha, he says. Brahmanatva has to be protected if we have to protect the Vaidika Dharma, he says. Brahmanatva. What is this Brahmanatva? Brahmanatva or Brahmanata. The Sanskrit two words are equal. Brahmanatva is Tvach Pratyaya. Tvach Pratyaya like Brahmanatvam. For example, Swachatvam, Nirmalatvam, we say, Nischalatvam, Amaikatvam, Murkhatvam. All these things are they are the Tvach Pratyaya. It is one of the Pratyaya. Pratyaya is a suffix. Like we have suffixes in English, we have this Tvach Pratyaya in Sanskrit. So this it only means that being a good Brahmana is Brahmanatva. That's all. Whatever are the definitions given for Brahmana, like Mr. Srinivas talked about the definition, the ideal Brahmana according to Buddha. Buddha never hated Brahmins. I totally agree with him. Because if we see Dhammapada, there is one whole chapter on Brahmanas, Brahmana Varga. The last chapter, that is the 24th chapter of Dhammapada, is only on Brahmanas and what an ideal Brahmin is. And actually how an ideal Brahmin should be. In fact, Brahmanata also is a word used by Buddha. For example, in the 23rd Vagga, that is in Naga Vagga, there is a Pali line. I don't know Pali, but anyway, I have just quoting right now when Srinivas was speaking. I just checked it up. Sukha mattayata loke, atho setyayata sukha, sukha samanjata loke. Samanyata loke atho brahmanyata sukha. So samanyata brahmanyata, that is Shramanatvam and Brahmanatvam, athava Brahmanatva, Brahmanata. So these are the words used by by Buddha also. Brahmanatvam, Brahmanata. Of course, he started as a Hindu and then all his teachers were Hindus. We all know that. So atho Brahmanyata sukha. Brahmanyata sukha means that is Brahmanyata is something which is good to society. Shramanatvam is something which is useful to society. Worshipping Mata and worshipping Pita, they are good for the society. So he is talking in that context. So Brahmanatvam or Brahmanata also is a word which is everywhere found in Sanskrit literature. For example, in Manusmriti, Shudro Brahmanatam eti, Shudrasyapi, Brahmanatvapi Shudratam, Shudrata, Brahmanata, Shudratvam, Brahmanatvam. So that is a pratyaya. It is only a pratyaya which only says that, which only means that being a very good Brahmin, living up to the whatever standards are described for a Brahmin in our text, whether it is in the Gita or whether it is in any other any other scripture, living up to those standards is what is Brahmanatvam. So that is the actually positive meaning. And in fact, there was also a discussion about the Jati Brahmana, Jati Brahmana, etc. In fact, our people were very, very open-minded. We have to see if we read the Sanskrit literature. And incidentally, after I heard the brilliant talk by Srinivas, I also feel that we should not only study Sanskrit, we should also study Pali. In fact, all the people who are now in this, not only in this panel, but all the Indic scholars, we have to study Pali also. Unless we know Pali, what do these Western professors? I don't know how many Western professors are proficient in Pali and Sanskrit. I'm not sure. But then at least we have to know Pali in order to tell them. Because if we do not know Pali, we cannot counter. If we do not know Sanskrit, we cannot counter. For example, about this Brahmana, Jati Brahmana, etc. If we see the Gita 18th chapter 41st shloka, there is a shloka, Brahmana Kshatriya Visham Shudranancha Parantapa Karmani Pravibhaktani Swabhava Prabhavaihi Gunaihi. And the duties for these Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra, all the four Varnas, they are given according to their Swabhava. It does not say Jati. It does not say Jati, their Swabhava. And for Swabhava, again, there is a definition. Swabhava is that Guna, Sattva Guna. Shankaracharya very clearly says Swabhava means Guna. He very clearly says. That is Sattva, Rajas, Tamo Guna. In fact, they are when a person is born, he is born with certain characteristics. He is born with certain traits. Those traits, depending on the purva janma vasanas, as they say, all the vasanas of the earlier janmas, they continue in the present birth also, and those vasanas they manifest in that way. So, depending on that, and what about people who is born in a Brahmin family and then who don't have those qualities? That also is discussed in the commentary. For example, in the commentary by Nilakantha on this particular shloka 18-41, if we see the commentary by Nilakantha, he very clearly says, I'll read part of it. Yatha hi Dronadishu Brahmaneshwapi Shauriyadikam. Drona was a Brahmana, but he was in Kshatriya Dharma. And Bharatadishu, Kshatriyeshwapi. Bharata refers to that Jada Bharata who was earlier a king. And he was a Kshatriya, but then Shamadikam Dushtam. In him, all the Brahmana qualities were seen. So similarly, Yatasmad, Yasmin, he concludes, Yasmin Kasmin Chidvarne Shamadayo Drishyante, Sa Shudropi, Edair Lakshanaihi Brahmana Eva Jnatavyaha. Yasmin Kasmin Chid Varne, that means in whatever Varna, these Shama, Dama, Titiksha, Ahimsa, etc. are seen, he should be considered as a Brahmin. It is told by Nilakanta Chaturdhara, who wrote commentary on the entire Mahabharata. Of course, he did not write a detailed commentary. He wrote detailed commentary in some places and Gachad Vyakhya, some small notes in other places. So, Nilakanta Chaturdhara, who is from the 17th century or so, he writes, not keeping in mind the present day Indologists and all that, he writes, Yasmin Kasmis Chidvarne Samadayo Dushyante, Sa Etaihi Lakshanaihi Shudropi, Etaihi Lakshanaihi Brahmana Eva Jnatavyaha. Even if he is a Shudra, he has to be treated as a Brahmana. And Yatracha Brahmanepi Shudra Dharma Drushante Sa Shudra Eva. And in a Brahmin, if Shudra Lashanas are seen, he should be treated as a Shudra. It goes on like that. And this episode is from Nahusha Prashna, because when Bhima was caught, we know the story in Mahabharata. Bhima was captured, he was caught by Nahusha and that huge serpent. He was about to be swallowed. And he can be freed only when his questions are answered. And when Dharmaraja goes, then that Nahusha asks the question, who is a Brahmana? So there, this discussion takes place. There is a fairly long discussion about who is a Brahmana. Just as we are now discussing today, even in Mahabharata times, there was a discussion on what a Brahmin should be and how ideally a Brahmin has to live. So that's what we see. So of course there are some more. How Yudhishthira answers that Nahusha. There are a few more shlokas in the same way. But the summary is that the guna has to be given priority. So that is what he says. Brahmanatva depends on the sattvika pravrutti. Brahmanatva depends on the sattvika pravrutti. That is why I say, when I speak to Nagaraj, I was saying that Brahmanatva has to be preserved in the society, and we have to go all out to use the word Brahmanatva in the positive sense, and then we have to preserve it. Then, in fact, Brahmanatva is, if we see, Brahmanatva is what inspired people to follow Brahminic rituals. All these Brahminic rituals, all other people also followed. Though, and one more thing we have to see here is only the ritual aspect, and regarding the study of Vedas, that was the privilege of the Dvijas, Brahmana, Kshatriya, and Vaishya. Whereas Shudras, they are entitled for moksha. It is not as though Shudra is not entitled for moksha. That is very, very clearly mentioned in the Samanya Dharma. Atmajnanam. Atmajnanam is something which is prescribed as a Samanya Dharma for all the Varnas. So we'll leave it. But then Brahmanatvam is something which has inspired the phenomena called Sanskritization and Brahminization in society. Until the British people created some other narratives and then made Brahmin a villain and projected Brahmin as a villain. They made this caste census first in 1901, and then till the time there was not much of inferiority or superiority in the society, because all the non-Brahmins, in fact, people of my age, I'm now about 73, so people of my age, they all know that in villages, we used to find very many non-Brahmin yogis and sannyasis, many people. And then you see many people, and we also used to see some people doing some tantric practices. And if we see the Tantra tradition, recently this Mailavaram Sudha Mohan has written a book called Shivasya Kulam. He has written a book called Shivasya Kulam. Mailavaram Sudha Mohan, who stays in Canada, he has done a lot of research, and he has written on Tantra literature. How it actually it helped the Hindu society in the sense that when the Brahmins were performing the rituals in that what is that Shrauta Parampara, these people, they were performing their pujas in the Vamachara tradition, Dakshinachara and Vamachara tradition. These other people, Shudra people, they were performing all their pujas, etc., in the same Vamachara tradition. And Brahmins also, they were also performing this Bali. Till recent times, they were also secretly performing Balis, though Shankaracharya denounced it. So anyway, this Tantra worship actually harmonized the society. Tantra worship very clearly says, if we see these books like Rudrayamala Tantra and those books, a Shudra who takes Diksha in that Tantra tradition, he is superior to a Brahman. So very many shlokas are there saying that showing Shudra's superiority over a Brahmin. So it is like that. Then this missionary intellectuals, naturally they had to use this word Brahminism in negative connotation, because the terminology, as we know, is a sort of weapon. It is basically a way of penetrating into masses. Once it penetrates into masses, then say that heat will build up in society, because the Abrahamic religions, they have got a clear totalitarian agenda, totalitarian ideology. In fact, I am not the first. Recently, I heard this word totalitarian ideology in one video only a few days ago. Germany, they closed down some mosques. At that time, the Interior Ministry of Germany, they released a statement. Even we can Google it and find out. So that Interior Ministry of Germany, they gave out a statement saying that these people are promoting totalitarian ideology. So not knowing that their ideology also is totalitarian. In fact, both Christianity and Islam, they say that in the whole world, their own religion has to survive and no other religion. So that is their problem. So when we talk about them, we have to use the words like imperialist religions and also totalitarian ideology. We have to use those terms. Then naturally, when these two powerful groups, that is both Christianity and Islam, when they are fighting to grab India, when they are trying to dismember India and then divide among themselves, because ultimately the objective is, as we know, there are three forces now. One is the left liberal, China, and one is supported by China, and the other is Islamic group, and again is the Christian group. When these three groups are fighting to break India, naturally they want to break it in such a way that they would share the spoils. So that is the reason why all the three are falling on this fellow called Brahmin. If we eliminate this man, naturally the whole society will be ours. So that is the basic their logic, right from Mahabharata days down to Francis Xavier, as I said. Then Brahmanism is equated to caste superiority. caste superiority as though caste is created something by Brahmins. Recently, I wrote a book in English, that is Indic Religions Challenges for Survival. Very recently, I translated it into Telugu also and sent it for publication. It is right now pending in the press. There, I made a detailed analysis of the caste. In that book, I have challenged these left-wing intellectuals or any intellectuals to show whether there is any scriptural evidence to show that Brahmins or Krishna or Manu or any other Rishi has created a caste. In Manusmriti, we only see mention of caste. It is not as though Manu has created a caste afresh. It is not as though Manu was starting with a mass of millions of people and then he just said, okay, you be a goldsmith, you be something like a washerman, or you be an ironsmith, etc. He did not say that. You be a weaver. All these castes, they existed in the society. Depending on the progress of a society, all the castes existed. In Rudradhyaya, in Rudram also, we see mention of so many castes. In Rudradhyaya, we see mention, and in very many other texts also, we see mention of all other castes. Why? Because Rudradhyayam is a meditation in the oneness of the whole universe. Rudradhyaya, you see them, all the people, Rathebhyaha, Rathakarebhyaha, all these people who make chariots, the people who make arrows, the people who make bows, the people who are thieves. Namaste, Stena is a thief. All these people are manifestations of the same Rudra. And if we see Purusha Sukta again, is a meditation of about the oneness of the creation. So that is what we see in our text. Our idea is to see the entire universe as one. And all the heads of all the antahkaranas of all the beings are the antahkaranas of that Virat Purusha. It is not as though we are making any discrimination. Even this Purusha Sukta, which talks about Brahmanosya Mukhamasit, etc., that again, it is only a visualization, it's a Kalpana. In that Purusha Sukta itself, the word Kalpana is very clearly used. And Sayanacharya's Bhashyam also says it is just an Upasana. It is just an Upasana to see the whole universe as one organic entity. So these are the things which we have to see. Then the reason why they are blaming Brahmin is basically one is this fellow is removed and then he is held responsible for this caste superiority. As I said in my book, I have just challenged all these liberals to show any scriptural evidence. In several meetings also, I said. Then, what are the effects of this negative use of Brahminism? We have to see this. These negative effects are, one is that if it actually sinks into our mind, if we do not know what exactly is the overall context, then it basically demoralizes the Brahmins. And I have seen my own my own circles. I see my own friends and relatives say they feel, yeah, there is a sort of guilt complex. Yes, we have been oppressors, and then we have done all mistakes in the past, etc. So this demoralization and development of a guilt complex, like we see the white guilt in Europe. White guilt in Europe, many people have commented on that. If you have read, say, this Douglas Murray, the British right-wing writer, he has written that book, The Silent Death of Europe. So, like that, many other people, Douglas Murray, every day he is talking very aggressively against the Islamic aggression. So, we find that this white guilt, coming to this white guilt, like that white guilt, we also have this Brahmin guilt. Then this demoralization will lead to what will it lead to? We don't even read our own text. Without reading our own text, we tend to become pseudo liberals. We tend to become communists or even Naxalites. That's why we see that many of the Naxalites are Brahmins only. Naxalite leaders are Brahmins. And our lifestyle also will change, and we give up our spiritual discipline. And naturally, when we give up our spiritual discipline, we eat all sorts of things, all prohibited things. And basically, to get acceptance, to get acceptability in those liberal circles, and also probably material benefits. Because if I denounce Brahminism, I will get a lot of recognition. If I am writing for Brahminism, I will not get any recognition, I will be denounced. But if I denounce Brahminism, probably I will be invited to some Harvard or some other place where I will be honored as some good writer or whatever. So this it carries more weight if a Brahmin criticizes Brahminism. or Hinduism. Like we see that many of these liberals who are Brahmins only, people who write against Hinduism in Washington Post or many New York Times, etc., Ananya Vajpayee and so many other people, they are all Brahmins only. So that is what we see. And if this demoralization percolates into society, even the Archakas always, in fact, the Archakas are the only small group who are just still preserving our, say, the Brahminical tradition in the society. Archakas and then all these Purohitas, etc., they are the people. In fact, people like us, we are not really doing much for the preservation of Brahminism, or we are not even studying our own text. Most of us are not studying our own text. So it is the Archaka who is at the cutting edge level. It is the cutting edge level of Hinduism is only an Archaka. So it is the Hinduism is depending on the image of that particular Archaka or a Purohita or some of these Swamijis and Pravachanakars. So these people also, if they give up their profession, then that will amount to yielding the floor totally to this Abrahamic, these pastors and Maulvis, etc. So, but then there are, of course, many silver lines also. There are a lot of positive developments. That is, the how to counter this, how to counter this propaganda and protect Hinduism. We are not fighting for any privileges for Brahmins, etc. We are only talking about the society, Hindu society as such. And in Mahabharata, there is a wonderful line: Simhabhigupto na vanam vinasyet. Simhona nasyeta vanabhigupta. That is referring to Pandavas and Kauravas. They say that Pandavas and Kauravas have to be together. Pandavas are like the Simha, and Kauravas are like the dense forest. If the forest is dense, then Simha survives. If Simha is also actively protecting the forest, in those days when there were no guns, etc., when the Simha moves around very actively and then protects the forest, then Simha also survives. So both they depend on each other. A Brahmin's survival depends on the Hindu society, and Hindu society, the continuance of Hindu society depends on the Brahmin. So the Brahmin has to realize that. In fact, in all, I have written several articles also on this. In my book on this Purohita Prapancham also, I have elaborated on this. In my recent book also, I have elaborated on this. So the Brahmin has to realize that he has to mix, he is held responsible for various ills of the society. He should also take some responsibility to unite the society. And what are the various steps to unite the society? And in fact, I have written in my book. But then one good thing is, this several non-Brahmin organizations are also that is, non-Brahmin organizations like Ramakrishna Mission, Chinmaya Mission, Sivananda Mission, etc., and several other Swamijis like Malayala Swami, etc. They are doing a fantastic job. Malayala Swami, of course, is no more. But all these missions, they are doing a fantastic job. What are they doing? They are promoting Brahminism. What is Brahminism? Brahminism is that Upanishadic philosophy and promoting sattva guna in the society. They are teaching Upanishads and all these things in Vedanta Society of California, Vedanta Society of New York, in every major city of US. We see the Vedanta societies. So there, all these RK Mission, Swamijis and such people are there. Chinmaya Mission exists everywhere, and then they are teaching Upanishads to all people in the in America. And not only Indians, not only Hindus, but many other people are also coming. Even the Westerners are coming and listening. So they are actually promoting Brahminism. And that is the reason why very many scholars like people like David Frawley and Francois Gautier, Jeffrey Armstrong, and many other people like, say, that astronomer, a famous astronomer, Carl Sagan, and many other people, they got influence. Of course, it is right from the time of Schopenhauer, who first praised the Upanishads. And then we are also aware of the tradition of what is called the um, what Brahmins, uh, Boston Brahmins. This Boston Brahmins, the people used to wait at the seaport of Boston in order to get the books from the ships coming from ships of East India Company coming from India. So they waited for all the texts coming from India, and then many of the texts, as Rajiv Malhotra writes, many of these our own original texts, they are there in many of the universities, many of these American universities. So this is what we see. Brahminism will survive. There is no doubt about it. Brahminism will survive because there are so many agencies now. Now the technology is to our advantage. And of course, the discussion on semantics about what is Brahminism and what is Brahminical, again, is only an adjectival form of the word Brahmin. Brahminism is not something which is newly invented. I just heard Srinivas saying that Brahminism is a word which is concocted by the Indologists. I don't know. I don't know whether it is true, because Brahmanatvam is there in our literature. So they have to use some word for Brahmanatvam or Brahmanata. Brahmanatvam, Brahmanata. How do you translate? You have to translate it as Brahminism only. So I don't think Brahminism is a new concoction. They also studied all these commentaries, all these bhashyas, etc. So the Indologists might have translated. I think it is a translation of the word Brahmanatvam. So that is one thing. So the discussion on semantics gave us some clarity, but we have to counter the adversaries in the academic field. And recently, I saw one YouTube channel called National Conservatism in USA. National Conservatism. There are some people, conservatives, who talk, and they are very clearly talking about Christian nationalism. They are not ashamed, they are not hesitant to talk about Christian nationalism. They are very openly talking about Christian nationalism, and very openly they are talking about it. So they say that Hindu nationalism, though they are talking about Christian nationalism, they say that Hindu nationalism is against the Western values. They say Western values of liberalism. Then what is this? Where have these Western values come from? In my view, we were just referring to the Enlightenment of the 18th century. Why did Enlightenment of the 18th century take place? It has taken place only because of their interaction with the Indian texts and Indian, and of course Chinese also, Confucius and Taoism and things like that. Because only their interaction with the East has produced, say, this Enlightenment. Yeah, all the Enlightenment literature, if we see, they were all inspired by our, say, our great texts, all the Upanishads, etc. They inspired not only Upanishads but various other works of Hinduism and also Buddhism. So these texts, they inspired this value system, or they were responsible for this value system called liberalism. Earlier, where was liberalism in the Abrahamic religions? There was no liberalism. Even Voltaire and Rousseau, they were inspired by Indian texts only. If we read about their background, we see that they were also inspired by the Indian texts only. And this is one field in which there should be a lot of research by our scholars. Particularly this 18th century Enlightenment, which they are talking about, it is a problem. In fact, if we see the Western intellectual, that is, the whole history, there were two periods of enlightenment. One is that Renaissance, 16th century enlightenment, because of their interaction with this Greek and Roman literatures. Then 18th century enlightenment, because of their interaction with the Eastern traditions. So that is how we have to see, and then we have to very clearly we have to put it forward. So that is one more thing. And as I said, while referring to this Abrahamic religions, we should regularly use, if they are using the word Brahminism, etc. to us, we should regularly use the words like imperialist religion. In fact, in my book, I have repeatedly used the word imperialist religion. In my Telugu book also, I have repeatedly said Samrajyavada Matalu, Samrajyavada Matalu. In my Telugu translation, I myself translated it. And then Samrajyavada Matalu, we should always say. And totalitarian ideology also, we should always say. It applies not only to Islam, but also to Christianity. So these are the words which we have to, which is indeed their character. It is not as though we are saying something false. It is their character. At least some conscientious people will accept it. Some people, at least they will realize. There are many people, of course, in West who are realizing. So that is one thing. And we should also write about the divisive nature of the Abrahamic religions. The divisive nature, that is which divides humanity into two groups, that is believers and non-believers. Believer, our man; non-believer, our enemy. Not only not our man, but our enemy who has to be destroyed, who has to be converted, who has to be destroyed. So this sort of divisive nature is not there in our text. In fact, if we see the Gita, there are three wonderful slokas which talk about this vision. What is the vision? The jnanam, satvika jnanam, rajasa jnanam, tamasa jnanam. Satvika jnanam is that avibhaktam vibhakteshu tad jnanam vidhi satvikam. That is when there are so many things in so much of so many apparently diverse things, you are seeing some unity. Avibhaktam vibhakteshu. So they are looking like divided things, but then you are seeing that one unity. So that jnanam is satvika. And when you are analyzing things, pratakttvena tu yadbhavam, pratakttvena, that is dividing. Oh, this is separate, this is separate, this is separate. You are dividing. That is divide and rule. That is rajasam jnana. That is the rajasa vision of vision. Then tamasa vision is you just hold on to one small thing and then you say that whole thing is, yeah, this is the whole thing, this is the whole truth and nothing but this is the only truth. So that is what we see in these Abrahamic religions. There's a combination of rajasa jnanam and tamasa jnanam. They say, yes, my own God is the only God. What I say is the only, my book is the only book. So that is, yattu krusnavad ekasmin saktam ahaitukam. That is irrationally holding on to one particular argument, saying that this is the only truth. So that is what is tamasa jnana. So these Abrahamic religions are characterized by rajasa and tamasa jnana. And Indic religions, not only Hinduism, but Hinduism, Buddhism, and also Jainism. These are the religions which advocate this Satvika Jnana. So if they are promoting Buddhism in West, let them promote Buddhism. I am not much worried. But Neo-Buddhism, as Patpuriji was saying, Neo-Buddhism is apparently it is something which is, there is something fishy in its very origin. Probably they do have a political or religious agenda, that Neo-Buddhism. So, okay, coming to this, what should we do to counter? You should also be repeatedly told that Abrahamic religions, they are belief based. This is one point which most of us do not realize. Our Indic religions, whether it is Vaishnavism, Shaivism, Shakta, whatever it is, they are all under the umbrella of the Upanishadic philosophy. They have all accepted the Upanishadic philosophy. And Upanishadic philosophy is something which is on a rational ground. It is an inquiry into the nature of reality. So that is what we are forgetting. All this, though Vaishnavism is something which takes the Upanishadic philosophy and superimposes on their own tradition. Similarly, Shaiva take the Upanishadic philosophy and superimpose on Shaiva tradition. Shakta, same thing. But then these are all harmonized only because of that Upanishadic philosophy. Had Upanishads not been there, these people would have been fighting on the ground. Vaishnava on one side, Shaiva one side, and some other people on some other side. So they would have been fighting. There would have been internal conflict. It is only the Upanishadic philosophy which united. As we see Shankaracharya, as we say Shanmata Sthapanacharya. So this is one thing which we have to see, which we have to say repeatedly. The Abrahamic religions are based on a belief system. Yes, one particular man says, yes, I have got communication from God, and you are all believing in that. Whereas in our system, there is an inquiry. There is an inquiry into the nature of reality. So this is one thing we should continuously write. And we should also say that Brahmanatvam is something which is needed for society. Brahmanatvam is not superiority complex of Brahmins or superiority feeling of Brahmins. Brahmanatvam is Satvika Pravrutti. Brahmanatvam is that Nivrutti Marga. Brahmanatvam is, if we see, Srinivas quoted some instances of where Brahmanas were rich and all that. Brahmanas, a few Brahmanas might have been rich. A few Brahmanas who were in the court of kings, in the courts of kings, they might have been rich. But the average Brahmana, if we see any other literature, everywhere, all the fellows, they were extremely poor. Most of the Brahmanas were extremely poor. And we see whether it is Bharatam or any other literature, we see all these people were extremely poor, including our great minister Chanakya. If we see Mudra Rakshasam of Shudraka, in that Mudra Rakshasam, one Greek soldier comes, a Greek messenger from Greece comes. He wants to see how this Chanakya lives. So when he goes and sees, he finds a small hut, an ordinary hut. And then on that hut, there is some darbha which is spread on that. And then the Chanakya is teaching something to his students. And then there are some cow dung heaps which are there, cow dung, the dried cow dung. So that is the description of Chanakya's house. And then, oh, what is this simplicity? So he wonders. And Shudraka did not write keeping in mind the modern day people. He wrote how, how exactly Chanakya lived. He did not have in mind about the modern day criticism. So most of the Brahmins in olden days were poor only. So Brahmanatva means this tendency to embrace poverty, tendency to be simple, tendency to live, tendency to be content, that say to santushti, whether he has money, asantushto dvijo nashta. There are hundreds of slokas like that. As Brahmana is supposed to have santushti whether he has money or not. And a Brahmana is proud if he is able to teach a text. Mahabhashyam va pathayet, Maharajyam va palayet. There is a Patanjali's Mahabhashyam is there. A person has to either teach Mahabhashyam or he has to rule a great kingdom. Mahabhashyam va pathayet, Maharajyam va palayet. So a Brahmin was contented by knowing Vyakarana. He was contented by knowing some Tarka. He was extremely happy by being able to teach a text. So that was Brahmanism. So these are the things which we have to focus, and we have to realize also. It is not as though I am bluffing. They are all there in our. In fact, if we read Sanskrit, we know more and more about the greatness of this tradition, this Brahmanatva, which has to be preserved, and then we have to write more and more. And for this reason, as I said just now, we have to know Sanskrit and Pali also. Pali I had forgotten. Thanks to Srinivas, I remembered that Pali also has to be studied by all of us, at least to some extent, to know what do these texts say. When somebody says, "Oh, all these neo-Buddhists," okay, let them. If they are real Buddhists, we have absolutely no problem. If all these Ambedkarites, if they follow Buddhism, we have absolutely no problem, because Buddhism is not going to divide the India. If in the guise of Buddhism, if they go to some other religion, then it is dangerous for the very unity and integrity of the country. In fact, I am more worried about. I am looking at this point. I am looking at this issue of Brahminism from the point of national integrity. That is my approach. So, from the point of national integrity, we have to produce more and more literature, more and more positive literature. There is a proverb in Telugu. There is a two-line theory. If one line is long, you have to draw a longer line. So in order to make one line short, you have to draw a longer line. So if they are writing about Brahminism, we have to write more and more about that. And then uh, I do not know about the people who are writing about Hinduism, how good they are in Sanskrit. But there is absolutely no other alternative but to learn Sanskrit and also Pali. So, with these words, I think I have taken some time, half an hour or so. I'll stop here. Thank you. Thank you for giving me an opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Aravinda Rao garu. It was a very not only erudite but a visionary uh, talk. It was covering several texts also. It was also giving references, and it was also it was covering various developments all around the world also. Uh, and it was uh, true to what is required to for an ending talk. It was passing a message also, very clear, straightforward message also. Thank you very much.